Welcome to a series of mini lectures, mini discussions, if you want to talk among yourselves, about inspiration and leadership in the workplace. What I'll talk about will be applicable in more places than at work, but that's the major focus. Right? I try to keep these around 20 minutes. I have a watch here in front of me that try to remind me. So we'll break sometimes what you might think is right in the middle of what we're talking about. But again, that's because your mind can only absorb what your seat can endure, and I want you to take a break. Now, I want to tell you a story about my grandfather and this watch. My father died when I was very young, and you'll hear about that later. So my grandfather kind of took over running the family, and I remember when we went to church, and I was sitting next to my grandfather. He said, "Now you watch me and I'll tell you what to do." I said, "Okay." Well, the pastor came in and he did this. And my grandfather said, "Stand up." That means to stand up. So I stood up. And pretty soon the pastor did that. And he said, "Sit down." That means to sit down. But when the pastor got ready for his sermon, he took his pocket watch out and he wound it and he laid it up there on his podium or altar, whatever you want to call it. And I said to my grandfather, "What does that mean?" My grandfather said, "Unfortunately, not a damn thing." Right? And so I've always been conscious about this thing about time. And I will try to remember that as we go along. I'm going to talk about something which is kind of a mixture of things, but yet one thing all the time. There's people who go to work and they would say, "I'm a worker bee." And there are people who have the title of supervisor. Other people have the title of manager or director. And then there are those people who we refer to as leaders. We can all admit that at some time we are one of each. Right? I'm not saying that a leader never works or supervises or manages. But a leader is different. Right? And the reason a leader is different is because you cannot help but be a leader. It just cannot be helped. The minute someone sees you do something, even if it's just walk into the room, you are setting an example. You are a leadership. You're sending a message. Right? You are a leader. Now you can be a good one or a bad one. But I've had learners in my classroom and learners in my audience who say, "Well, I don't want to be a leader, I just want to be a follower." Well, that's nice, but you don't have a choice. You are a role model. You are a leader. So we're going to talk a lot about how to be a good one and how to make a very positive difference in people's lives. And that's what all of this is about. And we'll talk about that in a lot of different contexts, in a lot of different settings, with different external forces. But we're going to talk about the world of leadership and how we do it well. All right? So that's where we begin. That's my introduction. Okay? Now, we will begin with the premise that people who work with other people and who are leaders are really no better than the combined efforts of those people who work with us and for us. There's not a hospital administrator who's any better than the doctor, the nurses, the surgeons, the anesthesiologists, the cooks, the parking lot valets, the groundskeepers. That administrator is no better than the combination of the work of all those people. I don't care how good or how great he thinks he is or she thinks he is. I don't care how many letters there are behind his name, how many titles he has. If the people who work for him aren't any good, he's not any good. All right? Now, since that's true, since that is true, and believe me, it is, it makes a lot of sense for us to make sure that we bring out the very best in other people, that we help them succeed and excel in what they do. That will make us look good. Now, you may wonder why a man who's obviously so young has so little hair and it's all white. Right? Well, it's because I have helped raise 7 daughters. That's why I have white hair. Who wouldn't? Right? And I have told my wife that if I die first and she outlives me, that on the back of my tombstone, I want her to be able to write, "He helped raise 7 of the nicest kids you ever wanted to meet." Then I would have been a success. As parents, we are the combined success of our children. Now, that doesn't mean spouse. That means as parents. Right? Doesn't mean as neighbors. It means as parents. And you'll hear me talk more about that later. But it makes good sense, if we are leaders, to help bring out the best in people who work for us and who work with us. And that includes in all of our workplaces. That includes in our home, and in our churches, and in our communities, and even in our nation, our political parties, if you happen to belong to one. If we help bring out the best in others, then we all do better. So how do we do that? All right? Well, I want to begin with a simple message that came from a man who I respect his talents and I hate his politics. His name is Roger Ailes. All right, he's the mastermind behind Rush Limbaugh originally and Fox News and all that. Definitely not my kind of people. All right, but in the world of communication, Roger Ailes is a genius. He wrote a book a long time ago. I bought a copy of it. Can't find it now, but I bought it. And the title of the book was "You Are the Message." You are the message. Well, think about that for a second. If someone loves you, you can tell them almost anything. If someone likes you, you can tell them maybe a little less than love, but you can tell them almost anything. If they respect you, they're going to listen to you. Right? You are the primary message. If they don't like you, I don't care what you got to tell them. It's not going to sink in very well. Unless it directly impacts their pocketbook. All right? You are the message. So how do we make you the best message you can be? Right? Well, number one, you got to be credible. If I'm going to listen to you talk about something, I want to believe that you know what you're talking about. I used to laugh. Many of you will probably be too young to remember, but there used to be commercials on television starring Michael Jordan and Tweety Bird. They were together making commercials about telephones of some kind. I don't even remember what for. Now, Michael Jordan might have known how to use telephones, but I doubt if he knew much about the system. And I know that Bird didn't know anything about it, right? So it was simply star power, right? But yet you were the message. My mother, may she rest in peace, my hero and my role model, and I'll tell you about that later, but my mother drank Maxwell House coffee. And I said, "Mom, how come it's always Maxwell House?" And again, some of you will be too young to remember, but my mother said, "Well, Dr. Welby tells me to drink Maxwell House coffee." Now, Dr. Welby was an actor of the name of Robert Young, and he had this little TV show way back when called Dr. Welby, M.D., and he took care of the people in this little town. And my mom loved Dr. Welby. And in a different role, he made commercials for Maxwell House coffee. And so my mom said, Dr. Welby says, Maxwell House coffee, that's what I'm going to drink. And that's what she drank till the day she died. Right? Because she liked Dr. He was the message, you see. He was the message. And I know that all of you could write down a list of people who ask you to do something for them, and it would hurt your own feelings if you couldn't do it. That you like these people, you respect them, you love them, you would want to do it if you could. So you are the message. Right? And credibility is key to that. Dr. Welby knew what was good for you. Your parents, although we don't admit it until we're in our 20s, knew what was good for us. All right? We go to the doctor, we want to see the certificates up there that says he knows what he's talking about. Your credibility comes basically from two things. Your education and your experience. Now, it's not just the education you got 30 years ago or 40 years ago. What have you learned lately that's new? Are you continuing to go to school and learn? Now, I got my bachelor's degree back. I was in college when Jack Kennedy was alive. All right? I got my bachelor's degree back in 1964, my master's in 1965. But I didn't get my PhD until I was 54. I went back to school. And since then, I've taken postdoctoral studies. Since then, I've continued to take training both in Wisconsin and in Tennessee in how to be a mediator. And my wife can tell you, I am probably Amazon Books' best friend. I'm always buying, always reading, always studying. But how would anybody know that? I don't go to work and say, well, I'm smarter today than I was yesterday because I did this. They know it because I share what I've learned. I teach. I help others learn. I give examples. And so your credibility comes from continuing to learn and to continuing to teach and help others learn. And it comes from your experience. The fact that you are working and you have been doing this for a number of years, and what have you accomplished in that experience? The more you've done, the more you've accomplished, the more credibility you have. Once again, but how will people know? Well, there's a secret to this. If you want people to know good things about you, then you find out good things about them and tell others. And once you begin to brag on other people, those other people are going to start to brag on you. It works the other way too, but I don't want to talk about that. All right? So get your education, get your experience, help other people, find out what other people have to offer, brag on them, spread the word, and your credibility will grow. And that's being part of the message. After credibility, there's a thing called character. Just what kind of character do you have? Now that's what I'm talking about, not what kind of character are you. But what kind of character do you have? And it means a lot more than you're not stealing pencils from the shop. All right? Character has to do with the way you relate to other folks. Do you give credit when they have credit coming? I'll tell you what's even better. Do you give them credit sometimes when they don't even have it coming? Most of what we do at work is a team project. And so you did 90% of it. You know that. Your bosses probably know that. But everybody else out there, you can spread the credit. I have a son-in-law who played in the National Football League, in the NFL, played professional football for 7 years. He even played in the Super Bowl. Right? Great kid. I used to go to training camp with him and watch these men pick up things that I couldn't even roll across the floor, right? These men, these giants with all these muscles and stuff. And these people run down the football field at speeds like, whoa, how do they do that? I mean, it's amazing. And so they go out there and they play this game, and there's two things that's always fascinated me. After the game, the quarterback says, well, you know, I wouldn't have completed that many passes if they hadn't caught the ball. I have the best set of hands in the league out there catching the ball. And I have this line up there giving me all day to throw it. And the runners say, well, it's simple. The guys in front of me open this great big hole and I just walk through it. They're giving each other credit. Right? And then the other thing that I've always been fascinated is after the game in these interviews, these great big hulking monsters of men, the sweat pouring off of them, and they're there interviewing about this game, and what do they say? They say, hi, Mom. It's never Dad, it's hi, Mom. I love it. And they're that kind of people when you go to their training camps. That's character. They're not looking to blame someone else. They don't play the blame game. Leaders don't play the blame game. They know that failure is an event. It's not a person. Failure is something that went wrong. No person's a failure. It's just the things that they do sometimes don't work. And leaders know that. That's character, you see. Leaders also are people of compassion. And this is important. This is an important thing. I don't mean they're pushovers, but I mean they have a heart. And they understand the people that work for them. My grandfather, we were farmers when I was a kid. My grandparents were farmers. And my father was a policeman. My grandparents were farmers. And I can remember going out on the farm and working during harvest time. And my grandfather had quite a bit of land. Actually, my grandmother owned it. But grandfather Stillman, my mom's dad, he was supervising all this. He was the head farmer. And at lunchtime, only we called it dinner down on the farm, that noon meal, our aunts and grandma, they'd cook these gigantic meals of fried chicken, mashed potatoes and gravy and corn and sweet corn and beans and pie and all that. And us boys would have to eat out on the porch, sitting on the steps, or find a stump. Because the extra people that my grandfather hired to help us sat around the table. And I'll never forget my grandfather saying, there is no such thing as a hired hand. We hire entire people. They have good days and bad days just like we do, and we're going to treat them like human beings. You boys sit out on the porch. I'll never forget it, and I'm telling you, that's 50 years, 60 years ago. 60 years ago, and I can see it in my mind like it was yesterday. There's no such thing as hired hands. We hire people, and they have good days, but they also have bad days. I can remember when I was up in Alaska and on an ad agency, I had a young woman working for me, and she came in late one day. And I said, well, what do you think I'm running here, a bank? You know, I was being kind of snappy at her. And she snapped back at me and said something just equally rude. And I don't remember what it was, but I said, well, don't snap at me. I'm not the only one. I'm not the one that was late. And she said, Bill, if I can't snap at you, who can I snap at? She said, when I woke up this morning, that big yellow lab had gotten sick all over the house. I mean, it was awful. And we had put some dirty clothes in the dishwasher, and it had gone screwy in the middle of the night, and I had hot soapy water all over the living room, the kitchen, running down the stairs. And I had 3 daughters this morning that would not cooperate. And then to break the camel's back, when I finally got to the car, the left front tire was flat. And you're hollering at me because I'm late? I felt that you could have buried me in a matchbox. And I learned a lesson from that day on. And I have remembered to always wait. There's a reason for this. Compassion and care. It is so easy to give, it costs you nothing, and it's worth millions to care about other people. You know, I love to cook. And boy, if there's a funeral somewhere, I'm cooking. I'm cooking and delivering food. And I know you know other people who've done the same thing. It's just simply compassion and caring about people. Now, there's another word here that starts with C I want to talk about. Remember, we've done credibility, character, compassion. I want to talk about charisma. And it'll be the last part of this discussion. I'm a great believer in the power of charisma. I have colleagues, I have had colleagues at the universities where I've taught that say, charisma is no substitute for skill. Well, who the hell ever said it had to be one or the other? It can be both. Right? Folks want to work for people who inspire them, lift them up, make them laugh. I don't want anybody to ever say that an empty elevator opened its doors and I got out. Or an empty cab pulled out and Bill McConkey got out. That's not me. I don't want to be known that way. I don't think you do either. Now, what creates charisma? And I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you what creates it. And you're not born with it, by the way. Forget that. Leaders are not born leaders. They're born naked little parasites. That's what they are, all right? They're naked little babies who are going to be dependent on other people for 15 years. We are developed into leaders, and we develop charisma. By the way, another thing about human infants that I'll talk about later. Do you know that when the human infant is born, it doesn't hate a single soul? Not one person. Doesn't hate anybody. Has to be taught to do that. Think about that. Okay, charisma. You're not born with it, you develop it. Number one, know your stuff. Know what you're talking about. It's no fun to go take an exam if you don't know what's on it. You don't want to go get in front of a group of people if you don't know what you're talking about. Know your stuff. Learn, learn, learn. Keep learning. Know what you're talking about. All right? Know how to talk about it. I'll talk about that in a second. 2, look good. Now, the world is full of people of different sizes, different shapes, different ages, different colors, but we can still look as good as we can and look the way we're supposed to look for the role we're in. To me, the most inspiring person in my lifetime would be Mahatma Gandhi. A little brown man wearing a loincloth, some glasses, a staff, and sandals. And Gandhi began the world of freedom for colonies all over the place. And he looked exactly the way he was supposed to look. No one would say Mother Teresa was beautiful physically. She looked the way she was supposed to look. Right? I get up in the morning, hey, I got a picture of me at home when I was a university basketball player and a university high hurdler. Since then, I've put on 100 pounds. My chest is sunk so far I could be a pirate. I'm wearing trifocals. I need a hearing aid. I had one, but my dog ate it, literally ate it. All right? My hair's gone, white. I know I'm an old man. When I get up in the morning, I go shower, shave, comb my hair, brush my teeth, slap on a little broom, and I say, go get him. You're a stud muffin. Convince myself that I look good, dress the part, look good. You should, every day you go to work, you should dress for the job you want, not the one you got. All right? And then people are going to look up to you. Feel good. Why should anyone follow you if you're moping around all the time? Get your physical body in shape, your medical body in shape, your spiritual life in shape, your psychological body in shape, your mental body in shape. Feel good. For God's sakes, get enough sleep. Most Americans are sleep deprived. Go to bed, get some sleep. My wife can tell you I'm in bed at 9 o'clock every single night, even if we have company. I get up and go to bed. Now there's a reason 9 o'clock is the hour. Because I've looked back at my life and all the trouble I got into was always after 9 o'clock at night. So I make sure I'm not up after 9 o'clock at night. Right? But I get my sleep. I take my vitamins. I go to the doctor. I take my blood pressure medicine. So take care of yourself. Feel good. Next, charisma. Remember we're talking about charisma? It's an outward focus. It's not you. It's we. Leadership requires a we-ness. A we-ness. In World War I, the young British men enlisted by the droves to go fight and die in Europe in the trenches. It wasn't for them. It was for we. We're English. We're going to protect our island. American boys do the same. They don't enlist to go to World War II, to the South Pacific, or fight in Europe, or go to Korea, or Vietnam, or Iraq, or Afghanistan for themselves. They may die. It's for the we-ness. It's for the USA. They believe in that. And when you have that outward focus, the bigger picture of the people you work for and care about, and you are sharing their goals and their aspirations, that's what you're working for, then they're going to pick you to be their leader because you have the credibility, you know your stuff, you look good, you feel good, and you share their hopes and dreams. And finally, learn your language. Learn to speak well. Learn the use of the language and learn to speak well. Someone says, "How are you?" Say, "I'm doing fine," or "I'm doing well," or "I'm okay." Please don't say, "I'm good." All right? Because you're not good. Good is a proactive verb describing something that you have done. You're well. Learn to use the language. Speak well so that you can lift the spirits of other people.